Welcome to Physician Heal Thyself, the podcast, empowering you to take a whole person approach to your well-being, spirit, soul, and body. Join me, your host, Dr. Lara, naturopathic doctor, entrepreneur, and a servant of Jesus Christ. We are not just a body, we are spirit and soul. It's time to integrate medicine and spirituality into our healing. Let's get started. Welcome to Physician Heal Thyself, the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lara, and today I want to continue based off the last episode that I did interviewing Nicole Angus on advocating for yourself in pregnancy and in birth and the delivery process, right? She mentioned something that I felt was really important to continue that conversation. And, you know, Nicole is a great asset to learn more about these topics. But I want to continue talking about something that she had mentioned, and that's birthing PTSD. We know about PTSD, and I hear so many, as a physician, I hear a lot of stories from women, right, on trauma that they experience. And this trauma, birthing trauma, looks different for every person, and there's many reasons that it can cause that you can have birthing trauma. So I want to talk about how you can heal from birthing PTSD, reclaiming your body, your mind, and your power. And so I know this is a very sensitive topic. Many women have experienced whether it's loss of a child or complications, and just so many different experiences. Maybe the way the doctors treated them, the nurses treated them during the process, maybe their decision, you know, their ability to make decisions was taken away. Whatever the experience is, many women do develop this. It's not often talked about, and I feel always very like privileged and honored to work with women and hear their stories. As they feel safe to share what their experience has been. So I want to talk to this on this topic. And so my disclaimer to the audience listening, or whether you're watching, is that I know that this is a very sensitive and tender topic, but I feel it's very important to really discuss it openly and, you know, bring some solutions for healing. So today we're going to talk about this, and so if you feel triggered by anything, just pause it, come back to the conversation, don't run away from it, because I hope to share a lot of great insight on just giving you some hope and inspiration that you can heal through anything, right? And so maybe you've never really acknowledged that you did have an experience that caused you some PTSD from your birthing experience. So if you or someone you love that has walked away from, you know, a birth feeling broken, afraid, and disconnected, this episode is for you. So make sure that you like this episode, that you share it with someone, especially if you think it's going to make an impact in their life. So let's get started. So let's talk about what is birthing PTSD, right? Because this is, you know, postpartum post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's a condition that can develop after a traumatic birth experience. And so the definition of traumatic birth is going to be unique to every person, right? Maybe something that I experience, someone might perceive that as being traumatic, and I might not perceive that as traumatic. So a lot of it is based on your understanding, your needs, your wants, your desires, and also your perspective of what you were expecting this experience to be like. You know, if it's not aligning to your desires and needs and what you needed in the moment, it can scar women in that experience. So it's not just as a hard birth, right? Hey, let's face it, birthing is painful, right? It comes with its challenges. It's beyond just having a hard birth or having a painful birthing experience. So this is something that the nervous system is perceiving as a threat, as a loss of control, and violation of yourself your body, or fear for your life, or the fear of your baby's life, or both, right? And so, as in the last episode, Nicole mentioned that, we can plan as much as we can how we would like for that birthing experience to, for us to experience that the reality is that sometimes unforeseen things happen, and we never plan for that because we don't want those things to happen. And so, but here's some symptoms that I want you to, and these are just some, because it could present in many ways, but here's just some symptoms, some signs that may include or may indicate that there's some post-traumatic stress from the birthing experience. So if you're having any flashbacks or intrusive memories of the birth, of that process, any anxiety or panic, or any hypervigilance in general, but also when it comes to having to go now to a medical facility, a hospital, anytime that it has to come to working with a doctor or a nurse. I have patients that even just seeing a stethoscope, the doctor's stethoscope, that might make them feel, anxious and have anxiety, panic, getting your blood pressure taken. These are all forms of post-traumatic stress, right? Avoidance of hospitals or anything that's pregnancy-related topics. You just don't want to hear it. You just want to, if someone's talking about pregnancy, you just kind of want to get away from that conversation. But also within yourself, you start to feel some emotional numbness or detachment, like you're almost not here. That is a concern, and so we want to obviously address that. But also difficulty, bonding or feeling safe in your body, or having a difficult time bonding with the baby. Now, for mothers who've lost babies at any point of the pregnancy, this can also reflect difficulty bonding with any existing children you have, or even your spouse, or anything that you used to love and enjoy. You might be separated by that. But keep in mind also that, I see this happen in women when they come to see a doctor. Even if that doctor is nice and friendly and it's safe, they still have this hesitation, like they might not be heard. They might have to be asked to do something that it's against their will or their desire, right? And so gyne exams, ladies, nobody likes them. Let's just be real. Nobody likes going to the OBGYN and having a gyne exam. But this can be very, very traumatic for someone who's had, whether it's the birthing that created some harmful damage to mother, or the loss of a baby. These exams can be very difficult for women to experience. And sometimes you can voice this out to the doctor, right, in hopes that they can really listen to you and honor and understand that you have some trauma, and so that they should proceed with precaution. But this is also true. Sometimes birthing PTSD is also because of previous traumatic experiences. So if there's been any sexual trauma for the woman and she's pregnant, that pregnancy could potentially, right, that woman may experience that pregnancy very different compared to women who've not had any sexual abuse or trauma. And so the birthing process can, trigger some emotional and psychological things. The body's very, very complicated. And so let me just say this clearly, that your trauma is valid even if your baby is healthy, right? Your trauma response, there's something that your body's saying, my nervous system needs to be restored. And so let's talk about, why does birthing PTSD happen? So it's not just about what happened, it's also about how the person experienced that trauma, right? And there's many, many contributing factors. So let's talk about some common ones that I've seen. So when a woman is not when she's feeling unheard, dismissed, or coerced during labor, we would like to imagine that people who work in healthcare, especially people who are working with pregnant women, that they would have a higher level of compassion and sensitivity to the needs and desires of what that mother needs, right? And that birthing, it is a natural process, not always a medical experience. And so that women need to be allowed to have a voice in this process and be checked in and be treated like with decency, right? As a human. And so when women are not heard, this can contribute. You have to understand. Here's what I want you to understand. If you find yourself in this situation and you don't comprehend, why did I respond like that? I'm stronger. I could have done better. And you start to play the psychological game. You have to understand that when women are pregnant, we have a high amount of hormones in our body. Super high progesterone, super high estrogen levels. And these hormones, they impact our brain, the way our brain functions. It impacts us emotionally. So our emotional regulation, it is very, very intense. And so this is why women, when they're pregnant, they're more emotional. They tend to cry more about simple little things. Hey, I used to, when I was pregnant with my oldest, there was this dog commercial, like to rescue dogs, and I was never a crier. And this commercial would come on, and I couldn't watch it. It was like, turn it off, change it, because I couldn't watch it. I would start crying. And so it's those hormones. It feels like I'm not myself, right? And so this happens when women are pregnant, especially in those stages of birthing. Our minds and our emotions, it does require a bit more energy to regulate ourselves. So it makes us vulnerable in this moment when we're not heard and we're dismissed or forced to do something we don't want to do. Now, some other contributing factors to our response in relation to trauma is if there's an emergency intervention with or without proper consent. If there is an emergency intervention that you just did not foresee, that can just really blindside many women, and it could really impact them. Now, if this emergency intervention is proceeded without the proper consent, without properly explaining to the woman, and we have to understand also that in some real emergency situations, there's no time to really give time to the person to process and make a decision. Sometimes if it's a life-saving necessity for either the baby or the mom, healthcare professionals are going to do everything they can to make sure that you get the care that you need. Now, on the flip side, if they don't take the necessary emergency, situation seriously, and they don't act quick enough, and it puts the mother and the baby at risk, and something does happen because they didn't take a quick enough action, that can also contribute to a trauma response, right? And so another contributing factor is just loss of bodily autonomy, especially, in hospitals. And so sometimes these things you have to voice out to the nurses and to the doctors of what your wishes are in terms of bodily autonomy, meaning that you want to, if everything is well, you want to be asked and treated like a person, not just assume and come in and do interventions on you without properly asking for permission. Severe pain or unexpected complications. I'm going to tell you something right here that's very important. Not every woman perceives pain the same. So there are some genetic tests. It's a COMT gene, COMT gene. This gene lets us know how all people, men and women, how much of an enzyme they make that breaks neurotransmitters down. Now, they call them the warrior gene and the worrier gene. The warrior gene is gonna be someone who has high pain tolerance. They have more resiliency to handle stress. And the reason they do is because genetically they make more of this particular enzyme, and it breaks down neurotransmitters faster. And if it's breaking down these neurotransmitters faster, then you don't feel as much. So this is why the perception of pain, which is perceived in the brain, right, in the amygdala, the perception of pain and the perception of stress, the stress, what they feel is significantly a lot less. So they can tolerate more. But the downside of these individuals is that they don't feel as much, so they have the risk of experiencing depression, right? On the flip side, people who have the worrier gene, who do tend to worry more, is because they're more sensitive. They make less of this enzyme, therefore breaking down neurotransmitters slower and less of them. And so that means that they're going to feel more. Their perception and sensory, they're going to feel more. So the perception, the brain perception, because the brain is perceiving the pain, right? It's receiving that signal. They're going to feel that response much stronger. And so stress as well, they're going to be more sensitive to stress. These are the people who they have really great memories, by the way, because they break down those neurotransmitters slower. They have really great memory, but under stress, their brain shuts down. And so these are the individuals that have like stress, anxiety. It's a real thing. And so I'm always curious, like if we tested a lot of people and we were to see where were they at, a lot of people can identify. And maybe you're listening to this or watching this and you're like identifying whether you're the warrior or the worrier. And you're like, yeah, I have a high pain tolerance. So women who have a lower threshold, right, of pain tolerance, their birthing experience is going to be very different from a woman who has this warrior gene and they have a higher ability to tolerate the pain. So when I learned this in medical school, I completely understood why some women go in with the intention of having a natural birth, right? They don't want an epidural. They want nothing for pain. And once the contractions get really strong and really painful, they can't tolerate it. And so then they want the epidural. They want the interventions for pain. And there's nothing wrong with it. I don't think we should shame people. My concern with epidurals, obviously, it's always that the effect, the long-term effects of puncturing right through that very sensitive area on our spine. And so there's always been some symptoms, which can also be a trauma response for women is getting the epidural. I've heard tragic stories from women. Listen, I've had women tell me how the anesthesiologist was having a difficult time getting the epidural in. And it wasn't that in some cases, it wasn't that the anesthesiologist wasn't good or he wasn't being sensitive. It ended up being that there was an abnormality in the lumbar spine of these women. And so then when they're trying to get in there, they're having a hard time. And so the longer they take to do this, and women start to stress and worry, or they feel pain right from that. And then sometimes they have injuries after that. And so, it's not, birthing is not for the weak. It's really very involved. So severe pain can contribute to some of this PTSD, including just that, getting that lumbar, getting the epidural can cause trauma for some women. Of course, if there's prior trauma that hasn't been healed, that's the key thing. If there's been past trauma, like I said, even just physical injuries to the pelvic area, to the lumbar spine, women have said, I fell and broke my tailbone, and then later on when they got pregnant, it was super, super painful. So any physical trauma, sexual trauma, can reactivate this kind of a PTSD in women. So the other thing too is lack of emotional support. It's unfortunate, but there's just this real reality about life that we would hope that women have a good partner, right? A good spouse. But sometimes women might not be married. The father might not be there, might not be involved at all. They don't want anything to do with it. I mean, there's so many relationship issues, right, that could be impacting this pregnant woman that's trying to birth. And so it could be maybe they are physically there, but just not knowing what to do. And, here's where, for men, sometimes they don't know what to do. So we have to also, get them to see the process, get them to understand. And you need to identify, what do I need in terms of emotional support or physically helping me through this? What can they do to help you to ease the pain and just be there for you? How to be present. We need to teach others. And this is why I do encourage that if you're going to have anyone in the room with you when it comes time to birthing, obviously your spouse is there, but maybe have a third person. Understand that whoever's in this room with you, they have to be there all for you. Not just for the baby, but they have to be there for you, to help you, to comfort you, whether it's a massage, whatever it is. There's a lot of pressure points that can help with pain, whatever it is, but that person needs to be there for you, not just to wait for the baby to come. And they need to be able to hold space for you in that process also. So a lot of things can contribute to this PTSD. And I'll tell you some stories. I've had several women who their trauma was because the doctor and the nurses, the way they were being treated, they were making assumptions about her. They were making assumptions about their situation, not knowing their situation. They made assumptions, in that constant interaction, from the medical professional is what caused them to have this trauma response. So how can we prevent birth trauma? I would love to have a magic wand and be able to tell you that we can prevent it altogether, but there's so many unknowns, right? The birthing experience is really a very mystical experience because it's unpredictable. It really is, and many things can happen. And so what I will say is, if you go in with a mindset of, let me be adaptable to the situation and what do I need to have in this space. So we're going to talk about this because while not all trauma is preventable, right? Many experiences can be softened or avoided just through being prepared and being empowered to speak up, like knowing what you want and what you don't want. And then knowing that even though you're in pain and you're going through a lot, that you can still voice yourself. And I'm going to tell you, the power that comes through a woman who's in the laboring and birthing process, it's pretty powerful. So we need to lean into that power and not be shy about it. So here's some key protective factors. Informed consent education. Know your options. And there's so much information on the internet. It's it's overwhelming. But when you're looking for information on the internet, don't just look at just general, just someone's blog or some random person posting things on there, which, there are some good, not people who are very knowledgeable, but look for some credible sources of information. Is this a reputable person? Is this a person speaking from their personal experience? Are they an advocate? Are they in the healthcare field and they're advocating for women? Like, who is this? Where's this information coming from? Is it valid? So know what your options are. We talked about the birth plan, but also know that you're going to have to be flexible and be prepared to not be so rigid with these things. It's more of a, what would you really want to see in this experience? And based on our last conversation with Nicole, she mentioned that a lot of doctors, they really kind of him and hum about, they kind of almost laugh at people, at women, when they present these plans. And I think it's very unfortunate. And I was thinking about it this morning as I was preparing for this episode, and I thought, I think I know why. You see, there's so much on the internet, there's so much on social media, and there's all these trends, and there's all of these things, and so it creates like this trendy kind of follower type of activity. But this is your health. And I still believe there's nothing wrong in putting things in writing for yourself, for the doctor that's going to be there, the nurse that's going to be there with you, your spouse, and anyone else that's going to be in that room. Don't make it complicated. But there is I still think it's a protective factor, and you can tell your doctor, I understand that in a case of emergency situation you're going to follow standard medical procedures. I completely understand that. And then these are what some of my concerns are. I want you to really communicate with me and validate me and listen to my needs. Whatever it is, it might be something more on how you want them to relate to you, right? Have that support team, whether it's a doula, a midwife, a family member, friend that can advocate for you and who's going to have the courage to speak up when they need to speak up in your defense. Because if you just have someone in the room that's not able to, willing to speak up for you, then they're just an audience. They're just a member of the audience there, and we don't need an audience when you're ready to give birth, right? You need someone who's going to be there for you. And then, there are more and more healthcare providers that are trauma informed. And I think that if you do have, whether it's a physical trauma or sexual, trauma, I do feel it's important to have the courage to tell your doctor, especially the one who's going to be there in delivery with you, like tell them, this is my experience and I'm concerned about, my response to this birthing process. And that way they're informed. And just find out what are some tools and things that you can also bring when it comes to maybe there's essential oils and herbs, or there's certain acupuncture points, tapping techniques that you could do that are safe in pregnancy that will help your nervous system to calm down and regulate. But I really encourage women to, even before they get pregnant, let's work with the trauma first so that you can have a more pleasant birthing experience. And so I already mentioned, but nervous system preparation, whether breath work is really powerful, beyond Lamaze. There's a lot of different birthing breath work that you can do that can help the nervous system, that can help you with the pain. And it's a strong inner power that you have to tap into and be very centered within your being to be focused and breathe through the process and the pain. Obviously, meditation. I know that there's some, I forget the names of them. It's been a while, guys, but there's some meditation specifically for birthing, and you start them as early on in your pregnancy, and you do them throughout the pregnancy, and there are things that you can do during birthing, and you and your partner can learn these so that they can help guide you through it. But I know that this helps a lot with being calm, cool, and collective, and being able to work through the pain, right? And then just also trust building within your body before birth, which, like I said, a lot of this should happen before pregnancy, right? So prevention's not going to be about controlling the situation. It's about connection, awareness, and advocacy for yourself. So those are just some ideas on how you can prevent some of it. We're not going to have complete control of it. And I always, integrate prayer into this. Just ask God to help you in this divine moment, to have divine intervention and guidance, to bring you peace through this experience, and that the right nurses and doctors, that they're in the right space, in the right mind, and that they're in the right relationship with you when it comes to this experience. There's pray into every area of this birthing experience. So how do we heal from birthing, PTSD? So healing is definitely possible. This doesn't mean that your body is broken. It just means that your nervous system had experienced something, it responded to something that maybe not the way you were expecting to, but it's responding in a way that's actually protecting you. It's alerting you that something didn't go well. And so what we don't want to do is stay stuck in that trauma, and then your brain adapts to this new way of being. And unfortunately, that's what I see, is that women go through many, many years before they realize that that experience was traumatic, or sometimes it's with the next pregnancy. And then they're even more hypervigilant, right? Their nervous system's more ramped up, more anxious about it. So we want to make sure that we understand that we got to restore the nervous system. So I'm going to share a couple of different things, and bear with me. Sometimes I have way too much information in my head and it all wants to come out. And so I try to really organize this information as best as I can. But, as with anything, a lot of these things, they do tend to impact one category and another. But let's start off with the first category, which is the nervous system needs to be healed and restored. And so I would not undermine the power of prayer. I've said it in previous episodes about praying and asking the Holy Spirit to come, and you can name every region of your brain. Go online, look at some anatomy of the brain, and look at the prefrontal cortex, your amygdala, your cerebellum, every part, your pituitary. Just pray into all of these areas of your brain that God heals and restores it. And then there's I'm going to tell you the options of therapies that I have seen and experienced that they help. And then of course I'm going to talk about my favorite ones. So there's like somatic therapies, right? So these are the body-based healings. And those are you got to understand that when women birth, there's emotions that happen, and sometimes they stay stuck and trapped in places. And so I'll give some examples, but somatic therapies there's a lot of ways to do somatic work. And I'm going to tell you, there's some really crazy, wild ways that I don't like. They make women force them to cry and yell and all that. I'm not into that. I think that the body's very intelligent. And when you work with a practitioner who's very sensitive and knows what they're doing, they can guide you without all of that commotion, right? But it is body-based work. And I'm going to go through the other ones because I want to talk about cranial sacral therapy. But some of the other techniques that you can do for healing the nervous system is that breath work, right? Slow, deep, diaphragmatic breathing techniques, gentle movements, walking, anything that you're doing cross rotation, grounding practices. But there's a lot of other herbs, and I'm going to talk about those in the next section. When it comes to going back to the body-based healing, I'm a big fan. I'm a practitioner. I've been doing it for 12 years, and I've done thousands of sessions on cranial sacral therapy with somato-emotional release work and neural manipulation. There's visceral manipulation, which is all the organs, including the uterus. And then I do Mayan abdominal uterine massage, which is a very cultural, very ancient, and like I said, it's very cultural in a lot of Latino cultures. That traditionally when women would give birth, before and after, there was an abdominal massage that was given to help not just the muscles but the organs and anything that's emotional. And it's very gentle. It's very therapeutic. And when any of these therapies that I've done on women, right, it's very gentle. They're fully clothed. And what I find oftentimes is that without even the woman telling me they've had trauma, every time I get to the pelvic area around the uterus or the lumbar spine, they get emotional. And that to me tells me, okay, there's a trauma here. And so I will always check in with my patient to ask them what's going on, encourage them to talk. Sometimes they're crying and it's hard for them to talk. And I just wait for them to be ready to talk to me about it. and then they'll mention whatever is coming to the surface, whatever it's an emotion, a thought, and sometimes they start to share the experience if they feel comfortable and safe to do so. And then I walk them through the release, which is, it is that breath work. It's take a deep breath in and just slowly exhale it out and just gently guiding them through. It's very, very intentional, and the practitioner has to be very present. So we're not rushing through this process. And I mean, these emotions get stuck there. I have so many stories. We'll see if I have time to share some at the end, at least one, because there's so many stories where women, for example, I had a woman who, she was trying to get pregnant. She was in her 30s and she just couldn't. And she was trying everything. And I knew, like, okay, let's do this cranial work. And so I'm working on the pelvic area, which she's fully clothed. It's more of a manual on top and under on the sacrum and on top on the pelvis. And when I had my hands there, my hands got really hot, and she started to express some emotion, and I started to have a conversation with her, and she goes on to share with me, trauma that she had when she was 14, many different traumas. And I knew that this is the thing. It doesn't matter what I give her, herbs and supplements, all this stuff. This is something that needs to get out. We did about 5 sessions, like 1 or 2 weeks apart. And after that 5th session, she came in when she suspected she was pregnant. And when I had my hands on there, the energy there, what I was sensing was very different. And so then that's when she told me, I think I'm pregnant. And I told her, I think you are. So we did the test, everything, and she was pregnant. We never had to give her hormones. We never did herbs. We never did a supplement. We didn't do nothing that she was taking. It was just healing through that trauma. And yeah, it can be that substantial when this person was young, a teenager, was raped. That rape ended up in a pregnancy. The parents decided to abort that baby. This young girl did not have a choice in any of those 3 things. She had 3 traumatic experiences: the rape, the pregnancy, and the abortion. And she had no choice in that, right? So once ago, we go back to not having that bodily autonomy. It was crushing her soul for many years, and her body. And so the body's amazing. God created our body so amazing. So we have to understand these things to be able to help people release these emotions. And of course, that helped her to transform her life around and continue to find deeper healing for that. So what the body really wants, healing happens when your body, not just the brain, not just the nervous system, but when your body learns, I am safe now. And when your body feels safe, then you're going to find true deep healing. So I am a big, big believer that anyone with birthing PTSD, you need to have this body-based, gentle healing, right? Learn more about it. It's important. So some of the other category is the naturopathic and herbal support. There's tons of stuff. My disclosures, I'm not treating you. This is just for educational purposes. If you're pregnant, you got to be really careful about taking these. There's some herbs that are safe in pregnancy, but that's for another conversation, not for today. So the body does hold trauma. Like I said, there's emotions, especially in the womb. And we know that there's herbs and homeopathic remedies that are so helpful to helping people through that. There's a really good homeopathic remedy, Ignatia. Ignatia is really good to dealing with loss and griefs, especially unexpressed grief. And so that can really help a woman if they've had loss of a baby and so forth. But herbs specifically for the uterus make note of these, are raspberry leaf, motherwort, yarrow, and calendula. Herbs that are specifically for emotional healing are ashwagandha, helps the balancing of your adrenal glands as well. Lemon balm can be very calming. The only contraindication with lemon balm is if you have hypothyroidism, so you're producing low amounts of thyroid hormone. You don't want to do too much lemon balm. Some is okay. Teas are fine, but when you're doing tinctures, which are stronger concentrations of the herb, you want to be careful. Chamomile is great for emotional nervous system, but also for the uterus. Holy basil is an amazing herb physically and for emotional healing as well. And then the nervous system, so things that are going to help restore the nervous system, you want to do things like magnesium, right? Glycinate or citrate. Omega-3 fatty acids are super important for the nervous system. But then there's a lot of adaptogenic herbs that help restore the nervous system, whether it's like bacopa, passion flowers, one of my favorite. Even lavender tinctures are good. Not the essential oils, but the tinctures. So many herbs that can help restore the nervous system. So you always want to work with someone who's a qualified practitioner, right? Especially postpartum and definitely during pregnancy. There's the next category that I want to talk about is just some of those traditional indigenous healing practices. Like I mentioned earlier, the Mayan abdominal uterine massage. There's just a certain technique that goes along with it. And this is to bring womb healing. So some of these traditional practices, it's you're repositioning the uterus. So it is a manual manipulation, but it's gentle. It's going to improve blood flow and, blood flow to the uterus. If there's anything that was kinked, it'll help restore that. It's going to also help restore, like I said, those emotional traumas, those emotions that get trapped here, unfortunately. And so it's going to restore just bringing balance back to the uterus, the womb. Sometimes women have their uteruses are positioned wrong, and that can cause issues in when it comes to delivery. And obviously, we want to be cautious if someone's had a C-section. We want to give time for the C-section to heal before doing any abdominal work. But any work that we do there, it's very gentle. It still can benefit. There's a lot of put some castor oil on that C-section scar, and do some gentle massage to prevent scars from tissue to be forming. So some of these things are not just physical, right? It could be emotional, could be spiritual that's going on. So there's other traditional practices that, more Americans actually are doing that. I'm seeing more women doing this, which is womb steaming. I'm not going to go into details, but it is steaming from the pelvic floor up. There's a lot of baths. I got to spend time training with Mayan healers in Belize. And it was just beautiful because we got to not just do the Mayan abdominal massages on each other in the process, and integrating prayer into that massage as well. But they have these ritual baths. So traditionally, in a lot of Latin cultures, and I'm talking about tradition like over 100 years ago, when women would birth, they would have this bath that they would create. And in the bath, they would put all of these fragrances and flowers, like natural flowers. And they would, the women in the community would come together, especially close family to the mom that just had a baby. And they would bathe her. They would just bathe her and wash her hair and just take care of her. These are the things that women don't have here. And, we were not pregnant, the group that went to train out there. But just being able to do these things, it was very sacred of women nurturing each other and taking care of each other. I thought this must be wonderful if you're pregnant and someone is helping you in that process. So there's a lot of postpartum closure ceremonies, meaning, when a woman has a baby, there's the faja, the wrapping of the abdomen, to help those muscles and organs to come back to where they were at. Along with the massages, they would put the faja on the abdomen, and the woman would wear that faja for their whole 40 days postpartum to help, bring restoration. So I do believe that there's these practices that help women postpartum, and we're not doing them. Women are just going out there with their abdomens feeling like there's a hole there, and not taking care of themselves, right? So these practices remind us that birth is sacred, and so is healing. And so the same way that birthing is a sacred experience, the postpartum is a sacred experience. If you have birthing PTSD, that is also a sacred experience. And it's almost like having God help rebirth this new part of you, right? So there's the emotional and psychological integration that needs to happen. All those hormones impact neurotransmitters. And women, when we are pregnant, when we have a child, whether that child survived or not, our brain has been altered. It's different. So we think different, we feel different. And so sometimes I tell people that you have to process that story at some point. Whether it's the birth story that you're sharing, or writing about it, journaling about your experience. Do maybe some trauma-informed therapy. Work with a therapist that works specifically with women who've had birthing trauma. And you know what? Let's start naming what was lost and taken away from us in that process. Whether it was a loss of a baby, or something traumatic that happened to you in that process, or the fears. When we start speaking up and using our voice and sharing these experiences with someone, obviously, that's going to listen to us, who's going to hear us out, who's going to be present and very self-aware, and is going to give us the attention we need. When you receive that, ladies, it's going to lose power over you. And so the more you speak about this experience, maybe you don't feel like it, especially if there's been loss. It's very difficult those first months, but the more the better, the sooner you start, the faster you're going to heal through that. And it's not going to work, fast and 100% resolved in 30 days or 60 days. It is a process, but it's important to start that process of healing. So just remember that your voice matters, and your story deserves to be heard, deserves to be witnessed by someone else, because you never know how, especially as you heal through that, what kind of inspiration it can bring to someone else. And so just remember that, we can integrate prayer for those emotional releases to be released with peace. We can use scriptures like Psalms 34:18, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted. Just know that God is with you. Surrendering the trauma to God, inviting God into your healing journey. You're not alone in this. Other people have gone through, and God is with you. And if there's forgiveness that needs to be forgiven, we never think about forgiving the medical providers that may have been part of that problem, the circumstances that you might need to forgive, or people you need to forgive. Yourself, maybe oftentimes women feel guilty, like I should have said something, I should have done that. They start blaming themselves, right? Instead of just asking God to help you in this process and to forgive yourself. So God is going to meet you in your pain, and not after it's gone. He's going to meet you where you're at in your pain. And just know that through these painful situations, it really does build us up to be a new person. So sometimes we want to, be focused in the trauma of, I failed. My body didn't do what it needed to do. My body betrayed me. I'm not safe. I'm broken. And instead of saying those things to yourself, instead of saying, I survived through this, I'm going to be okay, I am okay, that your body is still working and operating for you, and that, that you still have a life to live, and you can grieve whatever loss you've had. And in reclaiming your power is going to look something like reconnecting to your body, speaking your truth, setting boundaries for future care. That's important. And then choosing providers that align with you best next time, right? And just really trusting yourself in that process. And you know what? I tell this to women who sometimes have spontaneous miscarriages, right? That The body, God designed the body so intelligent, and there's so many things we don't understand. But sometimes the body knows when to get rid of something that it knows is not going to survive outside of the womb. So especially those miscarriages that happen in those first 3 months, right? That first trimester, it's still painful. It's like, how is it possible that you may have been pregnant for 8 or 10 weeks and you have a miscarriage and you grieve the loss of this baby like it lived its whole life, right? So there's all of these like process that you go through of the unknowns, like what would this baby have been like? Was it a girl? Was it a boy? What would it have done? And you go through that process. And this is where we have to leave it in God's hands, leave it in God's hands and help us heal through that. But you are, through these experiences, through the pain, you are being molded into a new version of yourself, a different person. So you're not going to be the same person before. So healing, I think it's really important that you heal before your next pregnancy, especially if you've had a miscarriage or you did have a loss of a baby. I think it's okay. It's definitely okay to give yourself permission to take the time to grieve, to heal, to restore the physical body, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. That way you go back, more restored. So before you try again, ask yourself these questions. Do I feel safe in my body to get pregnant again? Have I processed my last birth? Can I envision birth without fear overwhelming me? There's always going to be some level of fear, but it should not overwhelm you. It should not give you anxiety, panic attacks. You're losing, sleep over this. So if not, then this is your invitation. Don't rush. Just take the time to heal. Don't listen to other people. Just take the time to heal. And because the next birth, should be a place. It should not be a place where you have fear. It's a place of redemption, of restoration and empowerment. So I hope that this information has blessed you, has blessed someone. And just remember that life goes on. It really does. And it's okay to give yourself that downtime to feel those emotions, to process, to heal. But at some point, all of us, whether it's birthing trauma or other type of trauma, we do have to come to a realization of, okay, I'm ready to heal and move on. So I want to uplift you today. If you've been dealing with, birthing trauma, I really encourage you to seek the appropriate help, the right practitioner, person that can help guide you through this healing. So I hope this has blessed you. Please share this episode with someone who you know that it can really help them out, inspire them, and just shine some hope on them. Thank you for listening to this episode of Physician Heal Thyself. Until next time, be blessed. Thank you for listening to Physician Heal Thyself, the podcast. If you like what you've heard, please like, share, and subscribe. Help this message reach more people who may need to hear it. Leave your comments. I want to know what you think. If you're interested in learning more about Raices, visit our website at raicesndmedcenter.com. Until next time, be blessed.